This caught my attention. I think this is interesting, and it's along the lines of what I've often been saying. This is a letter to the editor in our Pomerado News, the Poway Chieftain newspaper, and the title of the letter to the editor was "City in the Country Confusion," and this was great. I love this article or this letter, and this was from Poway resident Sylvia Here, and she said, and you can see the text up there on the screen. With regards to the article announcing the new restaurant Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers on Poway Road, it really made me laugh when it mentioned that the city council wants it to match Poway's, quote, city in the country character. This from the same council and mayor that allowed 4-story apartments and condos that are 15 feet from Poway Road to be built. Where is the city and the country theme with those? Maybe the developers might have the right answer. Yeah, this is right spot on. I'm going to say it. It's an uncomfortable truth. Poway is not the city in the country. I mean, it's not just because of this development on Poway Road and the farm. Poway is a suburban city, and it's been a suburban city for decades. Does it have roots and history as a city in the country? Yeah. When the city was incorporated in 1980 and they adopted the motto city in the country, was it a city in the country in 1980? Kind of. It was definitely a lot less urban or suburban than other parts of San Diego. But in the year 2000 and 2010, was it the city in the country? No way. And now they're building, all those townhomes and apartments on Poway Road. They're building all the single family homes up in, the quote, the farm in North Poway. Is that a city in the country? No, it's not. and it was actually Brian Pepin, one of our city council members, which was the one that said, I want to make sure that the architectural look to this Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers restaurant matches the city and the country look and feel. I mean, again, I thought that was a virtue signal to voters, to, make it sound like he was, trying to work on behalf of Poway. Because if you were really focused and really adamant on maintaining the Poway city and the country motto, you would have not allowed any of this development to occur. Frankly, I mean, you would have demanded very similar architectural requirements of a lot of these other buildings. And in the end, government officials should not be architectural improvement committee. The decision on the look and design of any building in Poway should be up to the property owner to make that decision. But still, the whole thing is kind of a farce because voters and people here in Poway are being fed one line that Poway is in the city and the country, and then they look around and look at reality and notice that it doesn't match. And so you find people angry about it because of the city and the country motto, and people demanding that we get a city in the country when that time has passed. Those horses have left the barn and they're not coming home. So I don't know. In many ways, I think Poway probably needs to revisit that city and the country motto, or at least acknowledge that that is no longer a reflection of 2023. It's really a shout out, a feel good reference to Poway's history. And Poway's history is really cool. And there are some really great things that happened in our city back in the day. And I mean, the Poway Historical Society does a wonderful job, but the motto no longer exists. So, for this person here, Sylvia here, bravo to you for mentioning that. Ed Franklin on the live stream chiming in. Ed, thanks for joining us on this. Ed had a couple of comments. He goes, I was in Poway this weekend. My wife and I are really disappointed. Things look terrible. We both grew up there. Yeah, if you go down Poway Road, oh my God. I mean, it's shocking what's happening in between Carriage Road and Community Road. The area where the bowling alley and the thrift stores used to be, I mean, it's radical what's changing there. And not only is that building like 4 stories high, and I think along the street level, it might be 2 stories high with a facade. So it's like maybe 2.5 stories. Yeah, it's a significant change. And if you're on the backside of that housing development, by the way, they put in that huge retaining wall that is taller than the houses on the backside. And then they put a 4-story apartment complex on top of that. So those people on the backside of that apartment building, the Fairfield project, I mean, they got this monstrosity like jettisoning up from their next door neighbor. It's incredible, the difference. And there's a lot of people that are really angry about it. But you know what? This is the infill development that we were talking about. Because normally they would, developers, if they had their druthers, they would go and build more single family homes and create a 200, 300 unit neighborhood in Ramona or in North Escondido or in Fallbrook or somewhere else. And those have been shot down for environmental reasons. There are rules and regulations put into effect because of the Cedar Fire, which we can probably agree might make sense. But the end result is there's a desperate need for housing in San Diego County. So now they're building infill housing and everyone's getting upset about it. So, what do you think? To me, this is interesting because there are people of all stripes, people of all political persuasions that are angry about what's happening in Poway because people just don't like change. People are uncomfortable with change. But I do find it funny, ironic, that people that are so-called progressives are against progress, that people that are against housing development in the backcountry also object to it when it's in their own city. So it makes you wonder, do they really object to housing because it's in the backcountry? And are you using that the fire threat as their primary? Or are they really just anti-housing? Are they really just anti-developers? Because a lot of people just are angry at developers. They just think they're greedy, money-grubbing companies that just want to build it and get out of town and collect all the money. And they see that as evil. They don't want more people moving in. Frankly, they see people leaving California and they take joy in that. Yeah, if those complainers, just let them leave. If San Diego doesn't address this housing crisis, our economy will suffer because we're bringing in, a lot more high tech, a lot more biotech, a lot of high paying jobs. That's great, right? But and we're attracting talent here, which is great. Innovation, science, investment capital, all great. But these people all have to have a place to live. And whether it's infill or on the outskirts of the city, whether they're commuting or telecommuting, people still need a place to live. And it seems like no matter where housing is proposed, everyone gets upset about it. And Poway has had a tremendous amount of development in the last 5 years. Went through various surges of development in the 50s, 70s, and 80s. And we're going through another one right now. I mean, at some point, these things change. I mean, the Poway of 1930 sure looks a lot different than the Poway of 1950 and the Poway of 1970. There's evolution, there's progress, there's change. People just object to the change. Ed Franklin says reasonable change over time is reasonable, but this is drastic. Well, is it? It's visibly drastic because of the new construction, but it's only on like a little stretch of Poway Road. An area, by the way, that one would say was kind of blight. It was like a really old strip mall, an ancient bowling alley that needed significant upgrades to the building infrastructure. And now it's being replaced not only with housing, but it's also being replaced with, there's going to be restaurants and other retail outlets that'll be there, more walkable opportunities for people in our community. I mean, it's shocking when you first see it, but if you look at it in proportion and you look at what's going on across the city, the full scope of the city, this is just a tiny fraction of the overall city. Now, you add in the farm in North Poway, I mean, that development is far larger than what's going on Poway Road, for sure. But even that, you add both of those together, that's like, what, 3% of the total square footage of the city of Poway? I mean, it's relatively minor. It's just in a highly visible area. and people are upset about it. And Ed, you're an old timer Poway guy. I respect that. You were here and grew up in Poway, and when the Poway you grew up in, it was very different than the Poway today. And I think you can probably make that same claim for most cities. The city that I lived in looks quite a bit, and that I grew up in looks quite a bit different today than it did then. Just there's just a lot more development, a lot more progress. Okay.